Multiple drafts were edited to soften language and reduce explicit criticism of department leadership in that final report. This editing occurred prior to my appointment as fire chief.
America, we just got the smoking gun. LA Mayor Karen Bass didn't just fail to stop the Palisades Fire. She actively covered up what went wrong.
Mayor Karen Bass intervened in the Palisades Fire after action report, ordering key findings about LAFD's response to be removed.
Bass told officials that she was worried that the report would expose the city to legal liability. Translation, she knew that they screwed up. Instead of fixing the problem, she buried the evidence.
Unless specified otherwise, state parks prefer to let Topaganda State Park burn in a wildfire event.
We have documented proof that California had an official policy to let the fires burn in state parks. This wasn't incompetence. This was policy. And now it's all coming out. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Today, we're exposing the biggest government cover-up in California history. Let me walk you through exactly what the LA Times just uncovered, because this is textbook cover-up that would make Nixon blush. According to two sources inside the fire department, Mayor Karen Bass privately warned that the after-action report would expose the city to legal liability. She specifically told then interim fire chief that the findings about staff failure and pre-deployment decisions needed to be removed or softened. Think about what this means. Bass read the report. She saw that it documented specific failures by city leadership. And instead of saying that we need to fix this, she said, we need to hide this.
Bass, the Times sources say, told then interim LAFD Chief Ronnie Villanueva she was worried the findings would leave the city legally vulnerable for failures on lack of staffing and pre-deploying fire crews. Sources tell the Times Bass asked for those admissions to be, quote, removed or softened.
Now here's what got changed. The original report said the pre-deployment decision did not align with policies. That's fire department language for we screwed up. But after Bass got involved, the language was changed to say the pre-deployment plan was above and beyond. Let that sink in. It went from admitting failures to praising themselves. That's not editing for clarity. That's rewriting history to avoid accountability.
Sources familiar with the process tell the Times the original report pointed to operational decisions by the Los Angeles Fire Department, including staffing and deployment choices.
The original report pointed to operational decisions that contributed to the fire's rapid spread. Those findings were removed. Bass didn't want the public to know that the city's decision made the fire actually worse. And when the new fire chief came in and discovered what happened, even he had to admit it.
As many of you are aware, it is now clear that multiple drafts were edited to soften language and reduce explicit criticism of department leadership in that final report. This editing occurred prior to my appointment as fire chief, and I can assure you that nothing of this sort will ever again happen while I am fire chief.
Multiple drafts were edited to soften language to reduce explicit criticism of the department's leadership. That's the fire chief telling you the report was watered down. And he has to promise it wouldn't happen again because it was so obviously corrupt. Now let's talk about how Karen Bass is responding to these allegations, because her defense is insulting to anybody with a functioning brain.
Mayor Bass has been unequivocal for months. She reviewed an early draft of the report and only asked the LAFD to make sure it was accurate on issues like weather and budget. She and her staff made no changes to the drafts.
That's her story. She just reviewed it for accuracy. That's what she said. Made no changes. But the LA Times has two sources saying she specifically told fire officials to remove findings about staff and pre-deployment failures because of legal liability concerns. So either the LA Times sources are lying or Karen Bass is lying. And given that the fire chief himself admitted the report was edited to soften criticism, I'm going to go with Karen Bass is lying.
You hear reports that the January 7th after action report was tampered with, watered down.
Very troubling, right. That's very troubling.
Watch her reaction as she's asked about this before the LA Times story dropped. Very troubling, right? That's very troubling. She acted shocked that anybody would suggest the report was tampered with. But now we know that she was the one who ordered the tampering. That's not just lying. That is gaslighting. She's standing there pretending to be concerned about report tampering, but she's the one that did it. And here's what makes her defense completely fall apart. Bass claims she's been critical of response to the fire. So why would she water down a report that criticizes the response?
The mayor has been clear about her concerns regarding pre-deployment and the LAFD's response to the fire, which is why there is now new leadership at LAFD and why she called for an independent review of the Laughlin fire mop-up. There is absolutely no reason why she would request those details be altered.
Here's why. Because being critical in a press conference is different than having an official report documenting your specific failures. Press conference criticism is vague and forgettable in a couple days. An official report is evidence in a lawsuit, and Bass knew that the report would be used against the city in court, so she ordered it to be changed. Now let me show you the policy document that proves this wasn't just incompetence. This was intentional.
Unless specified otherwise, state parks prefer to let Topaganda State Park burn in a wildfire event.
Read that again. State parks prefer to let Topanga State Park burn in a wildfire event. This is from California's official Wildland Fire Management Plan issued in December 2024, just weeks before the Palisades fires. California had an official policy to let fires burn in state parks, and Topanga State Park is directly adjacent to the Pacific Palisades. So when that initial fire started on January 1st and it wasn't fully extinguished, California policy was to let it smolder.
You could not suppress fire in the state park, which is right up against Pacific Palisades, unless you had an archaeologist present to tell you where you could and could not put out the fire.
And it gets even more insane. The policy said you couldn't use heavy fire suppression equipment in state parks unless you had an archaeologist present to make sure that you weren't disturbing cultural resources. Let me repeat that. California required an archaeologist to be on the scene before firefighters could suppress a fire in a state park, because apparently protecting potential archaeology sites is more important than preventing a fire that could have destroyed an entire neighborhood.
The Laughlin fire, which the fire department failed to extinguish fully as it smoldered in the roots of plants.
And that's exactly what happened. That fire on January 1st was never fully extinguished because California policies prevented aggressive suppression. It smoldered for 6 days in roots, in plants, and then those extreme winds hit on January 7th. That smolder reignited and became the Palisades fires. This, my friends, is the smoking gun. California had a policy to let fires burn. That policy prevented full suppression of that initial fire, and that failure directly caused the Palisades fires that killed 12 people and destroyed over 6,000 homes. Let me connect all the dots for you, because this isn't just about one fire or one cover-up. It is a pattern of Democrat leadership prioritizing ideology over citizen safety. That policy prevents full suppression of that initial fire. The fire smoldered for 6 days. It reignited and became the Palisades fires. Then Karen Bass, who conveniently was in Ghana when the fire started, despite receiving warnings, comes back to the disaster. The fire department writes an honest after-action report documenting all the failures, and Karen Bass orders it to be watered down because she's worried about lawsuits.
Outdated and inconsistent policies, protocols, and standard operating procedures created ambiguity around evacuation authority and responsibilities. In many cases, decision-making roles were unclear.
Even the county's independent report found outdated policies, inconsistent practices, and communication vulnerabilities. They found that decision-making roles were unclear, and that's why evacuation orders were delayed. This is systematic failure at every single level. State policy prevented fire suppression. City leadership failed to pre-deploy resources. Communication systems failed during the evacuation process. And when it was all over, the mayor covered it up.
There were signs, warning signs that were there for 4 to 5 days. I'm not going to say that they were ignored, but they definitely didn't rise to the level of the appropriate actions needed.
The warning signs were there. 45 days. California knew extreme winds were coming down the pipe like the Wizard of Oz. They knew fire risks were critical, and they did absolutely nothing because their ideology told them to let nature take its course. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. Real estate developer Rick Caruso, who ran against Bass for mayor and lost, just announced he's reconsidering running for office again.
Was it this article today that really kind of made you reconsider?
Yeah, because incompetence is one thing, but it's very different to mix incompetence and now you've got somebody who is actively lying.
Listen to how he frames this. Incompetence is one thing, but it's very different when you've got somebody who's actively lying to the people that she's sworn to serve. That's the key distinction. Everyone knew Karen Bass was incompetent. She was in Ghana when the fire started. She failed to pre-deploy resources. She let the city burn like Usher. But now we also know that she lied about it and covered it up. LA residents are furious. They lost their homes. They lost their loved ones. And now they're finding out the mayor knew what went wrong and hid it from them. America, it's all coming out. Karen Bass ordered the Palisades Fire's after action report watered down to hide failures that could have saved lives. California had an official let it burn policy that prevented full suppression of the initial fire and became the Palisade Inferno that killed 12 people and destroyed over 6,000 homes. This, my friends, wasn't incompetence. This was ideology. California cared more about environmental policies and architectural sites than protecting neighborhoods. And when their policies caused a disaster, they covered it up. The LA Times just exposed the smoking gun. The fire chief admitted the report was edited. And even Rick, who lost to Bass, is now reconsidering running because he knows LA residents are done with leaders who actively lie to them. This is what Democrat leadership looks like. Ideology over safety, cover-ups over accountability, and citizens pay the price with their homes and lives. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.